Welcome, fans. We are live on thehannibaltv.com with a special blockbuster, pun intended, edition of the Great North Wrestling Podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling, and I'm very pleased to welcome once again with a return to this channel for a career interview. I would, of course, be talking about none other than Marcus Buff Bagwell. Thank you for coming on tonight, sir.
Thank you so much for having me, man. How you guys doing up there?
The weather is actually starting to turn very nice. It can sometimes snow and be icy up here in Canada in April into May, but we're doing well so far.
Fantastic. I love it. I love the snow, man. So I've always loved to come to Canada, but I'm sure when you get as much snow as you guys get, I guess it gets a little bit taxing.
Yeah, you definitely want to tap out about mid-February. I wanted to start off right off the bat before we get into some of your career related questions about your experience both filming that Dark Side of the Ring episode and then your review of it. And then once you're done that, I have a very specific question that jumped out at me that I wanted to pose to you.
Well, Dark Side reached out to me originally, and I was very, very excited instantly because anytime you get on a chance to get on television, it really is special because people look at that like it's like when you get on television, it's almost like something magic that happens. And I mean, wrestlers that are in and out of the business and are holding on to the business. They just get, I remember they used to tell me they would just get one match on television and it gave them a whole nother couple of years of bookings because of that one shot. And so I knew the power that was behind this episode coming up, but it's a pretty deep story, bro. It's pretty deep. And according how the story's told, it could have been told in a way that is not so good, not so pleasant. But when I sit down and I watch that show, as we were shooting it, I was thinking I've always been extremely transparent. I tell the world, even through my addiction, it wasn't like I was trying to hide it. I had beer on podcasts. I had drinks with me. I was not trying to hide it. I'm very open about my whole livelihood and my whole world. But as I was telling the story to the Dark Side of the Ring, it was just, wow, this is really deep. I mean, how many people shoot their father? Not many. And then to live and talk about it, and they both live to talk about it. It's pretty crazy. And I mean, if we would have got a Hollywood writer to come in and write the story of what went on from August 27th, 2022, which is my sobriety birthday, to write it down, there's no way that Hollywood could have wrote it better than what actually happened, even with the Scotty Riggs stuff. It just really is a special story. And as I was telling the story to Dark Side and they were taping it, I knew what a great story it could be, but it's according to how they tell it. So, you edit this and you clip that and you put that in it. I mean, I was pretty nervous about it, but as long as they told it straight up, I knew it was going to be a heck of a story. And when I got done watching that episode, I was very excited. I was really blown away on how good they did it. The reenactments, it's not me in those reenactments, but I'm telling you, it was me. And it wasn't my mother in those reenactments. But that was my mother, bro. I don't know how they do that AI stuff. The father didn't look like nothing like my father, but the gun on top of the refrigerator and just all the way my body moved, the way my mom was moving, it was shockingly on the money. And I really think that out of that, I did not lose one of my fans. And I think I won some new fans because of the story getting here's his story. Here's two ex-wives that I divorced that still have good things to say about me. That's got to say something to everybody that, maybe Bagwell's not such a bad guy. Maybe Mark's a really good guy. So I was very excited about it. I knew when the episode was over, it was going to do a lot for my career and just get a lot of the questions out of the air that may have been kind of questionable about me. And now it's all out and it was told well. And I was very excited about it.
Yeah, it certainly was extremely memorable, and I think you're on the money when you say that that episode actually would not only solidify the fan base that you have, but actually add more because it really is a triumph over a lot of adversity in the end, which we all like to hear. One question though that jumped out at me was when you were in your I guess it was your still your high school era. There was a comment in the show or a portrayal that your father actually gave you and your friends cocaine. Was that a shoot?
Well, Mark put a little jam on everything to make it a little bit of a better story. No, it's actually not. I mean, my father, there was one occasion that we came home and I'd gotten a fight with, one of the tough guys of the group and of the Buckhead group, and I was 2 years younger, but it was a big fight. It was the two big guys that were fighting, and we came home from that, and I remember we had a little bit of coke in front of our father, but him coming out and passing 8 balls out, that's not exactly what was going on, but the machine guns and the poker hands and me shooting my father, and it was all very real. He put a little extra jam on the stories.
Yeah, yeah. Well, certainly one of the more memorable of that series, and definitely most talked about. I know you did some acting, and that was portrayed in the show. Are you interested? I know we're going to talk a little bit about your in ring and what the future holds there, but are you interested now that you've had this filming experience to do more in that side of the entertainment industry?
When I first got into professional wrestling, this was going to be a stepping stone to film work. This was going to be just a little bit of a little segue to do movies, to be a movie star. And I think everybody that my goals, I shoot high. I mean, so the goals I was planning was wrestling was just going to be a small stepping stone, and I was going to be a movie star. And so when this first happened, plans were going just as so, and nobody really talks about this much, but the 10 months in the ring I lost when I broke my neck was 10 months that I will never be able to get back. That I look at it like there was a window that was closing on professional wrestling talent. And the more it closed, there's more stars trying to jump through that crack before it closes. And I really feel like because of that 10 months that I was going to be right. I mean, The Rock to me is the best wrestler in the world. He is the most charismatic, just like he says, he's the most electrifying superstar there is The Rock. But I do feel like I could have been like a John Cena type movie star. But that window that was closing when I hurt myself and I lost that 10 months was crucial in the end. I mean, that's almost a full year that I was not wrestling. And to stay over and to stay popular as Buff Bagwell, that's not easy, man. I was off TV for 3 whole months. That's 12 Nitros, 12 Thunders, and 3 pay-per-views. That's a huge deal. And I was off for all of that. And then I got back on TV as Scotty's, manager and stuff. But it was a huge, huge loss for me. But I do feel with all my heart that if the WWF, if we could have had something work out to where I could have got signed, and then gone to rehab under WWF, and got myself back together under the WWF, I do think there would have been many things before that window closed of me getting in that crack of being more movies and a much bigger career than I had. It's very unfortunate. I was just banking on that you have to get in trouble or warned before something's too irreversible. I'm a big fix it person. I fix it. And I didn't have a chance to fix the WWF. It was a blindside main event one week, fired the next. And I wouldn't even fire, they called it released. So the releasing of whatever you call a release, they released me from that. And, and the story was bad match and your mother called. I mean, I'm not sure how that works that way, but I love the WWE. I love the WWF. I'd give anything to be under that umbrella. I hate still talking about what happened, but people are interested in it and they want to know what happened to Mark Bagwell. And I tell them the absolute truth of what happened. And this is what went down. But it's not me complaining about it. I'm just stating the facts. I love Vince McMahon. I love the WWF and the WWE, and would give anything to have had that unbelievable 20-year run with the WWF, WWE.
Yeah, and I have that question down kind of in a different manner that we'll get to a little bit later. But closing off the dark side of the ring, were you surprised at all that Bischoff put you over it in the end as he did, considering again what has been reported, throughout the years, anecdotally in the internet, and you take that for what it's worth in terms of him being critical as to your interactions with him when you work for him?
I was, again, I felt like I was just so pleased with how everybody acted. Of course, Scorpio's comment about the size of my penis was crazy. I mean, who talks about another guy's penis? And I've got several wives that, I mean, it's just ridiculous to even talk about. Him saying that blows my mind. How many times he saw my penis is zero. I don't know why he'd even say that, but to me, I was like, of all things, this was a fantastic episode. And Scorpio's got to say something like stupid like that. But regardless, it was said. That was the only thing in the whole thing that I felt like should not have been said and was kind of stupid, that they could have easily cut out of there and should have. But Eric and me were at first, we wasn't very close because I was this young kid that he didn't really know, and then we really got close. It was amazing. It was really amazing how Eric did me, especially when I broke my neck and we had a handshake deal on a 3-year contract, and I signed my contract before my neck surgery in the hospital. So I signed my contract with a broken neck, and that didn't have to go down that way. He could have waited and saw if I was going to be okay or not, and then say, hey, man, we don't want you. He made it very clear from the jump that we know what Marcus Alexander Bagwell brings to the table here, and we're fine with the 3-year deal we've got on the table for you, and let's do it. So Eric Bischoff is at the top of the top when it goes to respect in this business for me.
In the episode, you talked about your journey into pro wrestling, being discovered, Missy Hyatt getting credit for that, etc. But I wanted to ask you to drill down a bit on your training process under the greats that you did with Dusty Rhodes, Mike Graham, and Steve the Brawler Lawler. Was your training what you? I guess that's a perception, but when you were going into the training, being a high level athlete in high school, etc., did you find it overly onerous, or was it something that you hit and then decided, okay, this is for me, or this is really difficult?
This is extremely, extremely clear to me looking back on this day. And the day was I was going to wrestling school at this place called the Auction Barn for Steve the Brawler Lawler. And it was a little barn way down Highway 9 in Alpharetta. And, about a 45-minute hour drive for me. And I get there and I've got to set this ring up and wrestle in it on a training session, not having any idea what's coming at me. And we're setting this ring up in the middle of this auction barn, and it's 90 degrees outside. And I'm like, what in the hell are we doing here? But I was a kid that knew how to do everything. Everything I ever did. I remember snow skiing when I was like 7, 8 years old. And I mean, they put skis on me, and I was at the top of the mountain coming down it with no lessons. I just was very quick in the athletic world to catch on to things, from motorcycles to go-karts. I was a Golden Glove state champion boxer. I was just good at everything that I tried, and I was very fortunate for that. But I would try something and I was good at it. So my whole family, when I was going to do this wrestling thing, they threw a party for me going to my first night of wrestling school. And I remember vividly coming home to a party for me and me telling everybody I wasn't going back. And I go, what do you mean? I go, I've never done anything like this. This is the craziest, hardest thing I've ever done. Something a lot of people don't know is Missy Hyatt, being who she was a big advantage for me. But at the early stages, it was a little bit of a disadvantage because I knew what WCW's roster looked like. I knew what their road schedule looked like. And here I go do a one night workout in the wrestling ring. And I'm trying to figure out how I do this 4 to 5 times a week for the rest of my life. And I couldn't see it. I said, there's no way. I was crippled over one night. My back was killing me. My shoulders, my knees, my heels for them hitting the mat were bruised. And for some reason, I went back the next day. I don't know why. I don't know how. And we had to tear the ring down after the session and put the ring back up because there's an auction on those days. So we set it up, wrestle in it, tear it down, and do it again. Now, I'd love to say I did that for a year and I paid my dues, but it would be the biggest lie I've ever told in my life. I think we did that for about a month. And a month of that's a long time to me. But after a month, Steve Lauder came to me and he goes, bro, you got this. You can do this and you're going to be great at it. He goes, let me show you, let me smarten you up a little bit. So he lightened up on me and showed me how to work these things. And I was first very mad at him for beating me up for a month. And then when I realized he explained that what he explained, then I respected him for it. And then right after that was when North Georgia came in. So I really learned this craft by looking stupid in front of people for a solid year. I mean, because when you mess up in front of people, you never do it again. You never do it again. You try not to anyway. And I was good about, remember, fixing it. If I did something, it was stupid looking, and I saw it look stupid, I fixed it, bro. I fixed it. So that's what I did. So I learned by being on TV, watching myself on TV, correcting and fixing what I did wrong, and getting the hang of it. And then when global happened to where that next level at stars were, where your Hot Stuff Eddie Gilberts and your Rip Rogers and your Tugboats and your Patriots and your Harlem Heats and your X-Pacs, which was Lightning Kid, that next level of stars, really, it was at a perfect time to where I moved right up with it and I understood. But there was a solid year that I'd get back in my car with my first wife, and it would be silence for the first 10 or 15 minutes of the car ride home from me wrestling. And I finally go, what is it? What is it? She goes, I don't know. You're horrible. You're horrible. And I go, I know. Why can't I do this? She goes, I've never seen anything like it, Mark. You can do everything. Everything you've ever done, you do it great. But I don't know. I go, is it as bad as it looks? And she goes, yes, it's horrible. It's horrible. So I just kept going back and kept going back. And the biggest thing I can remember that really helped me at a time that I was starting to think I couldn't do this. I went to Global, and I got to Global. I walked in the dressing room, and the baby faces and the heels were in the same dressing room. And I went, wait a second, y'all can talk before you go out? And they looked at me like I was crazy because we didn't do that at North Georgia. We were at skating rinks on opposite sides of the buildings, getting in the ring, green as green can get, and trying to call spots when you could hear a penny drop in a crowd of 12 people, and looking stupid and trying to call spots. And it was horrific. So when I learned that you could go over a few things, man, I went from totally lost to pretty with it overnight. And then I got better and better and better. And then WCW hit, and I was off and running.
Yeah, it's interesting that you in your timeline there, of course, brought up Global, because that was something I really wanted to ask you about. When, first of all, how you became involved with Global, and when you came in, were you under the assumption that this company was going to be a big deal given the ESPN contract, and then of course the rumors that Pedicino was funded by a mysterious investor, etc. And also, part B of that question: how did you feel when you were presented with that what has gone on to be an iconic character, that handsome stranger gimmick?
Yes, it was a really big part of my career, and it was only 3 months. But it was when Global happened, we knew, we didn't think, we knew it was going to be the next, it was going to be the ECW. It was going to be WCW, the WWF, and it was going to be GCW. We were on ESPN at a 4 p.m. time slot, bro. It was a big deal. So we thought we were going to be this, but I wasn't even good enough to be thinking this. But I do remember knowing that this was going to be the third company. And when I caught on as quick as I did with Global and got a much, much better overnight with the talent, is I do remember there was going to be 3 guys that were under contract. They were going to go under contract first, and I was one of the 3. And it was going to be the Patriot, Raven, and myself. And I remember Raven got some kind of contract. The Patriot got his contract. And when they were calling me for what I thought was my contract talk, they were calling me to tell me that it was over. And I was like, what? So, this sounds like I'm lying when I tell this story, but it's so surreal to me that I'm going to say it was a day, but I think it was about an hour that I got the call that Global was over, and the call that was Magnum TA to come meet Dusty. I'm telling you, I think it may have been within a minute. And it was 30 years ago, man, 35 years ago. So it seems like, like I just went click, hello, but it had to be within the day for the memory I've got of it. And I know it was within the hour of being devastated that Global was over. And then I got a meeting with Dusty Rhodes. It was crazy.
And what did you have an appreciation when you got that call and you met with Dusty? What a big a career milestone that would turn into. And did you get any advice, or what was the nature of the information that Dusty gave you?
To answer your question, no, I did not know. But that may have been a good thing that I didn't know. I had no idea how big of a deal. I didn't know who Magnum was. I had seen him on TV a few times, but you got to think about it, brother. I'm 20 years old right here. I just graduated high school a year and a half ago. This just when I look back on it, bro, it's like it seems like it was 10 years. But from the day I graduated to the day I went on WCW TV for the first time was less than 3 years. It was less than 3 years, bro. I mean, when I think about it, it was 10, but it was 2 years and some months. It wasn't even 3 years. So that's a fast track, bro. So to answer your question, no, I didn't know. When Magnum called me, he goes, "Is Marcus Bagwell there?" And I said, "This is him. This is Magnum." And I swear to God, I said, "Magnum who?" And he goes, "Magnum T." And the way he said Magnum TA, I remember seeing him on TV years before. And because I hadn't watched wrestling for several years, but probably at 14. So 5 or 6 years before I heard that name or seen that name. My brothers knew who it was, of course. But I did not know who it was until he said, the way he said it, I knew I was supposed to know. And I was like, "Oh, Magnum, I'm so sorry," So I faked it till I made it. It was one of those fake it till you make it, man. And that's what I did. I was young. I had just enough fake it to make it through to where I could make it. I really did.
And when you were on television, from a fan who was watching at the time, it seemed to me that well, not thinking in those terms, but that you were figured in almost like right off the bat, that they had plans for you. When you were discussing your spot, did they lay out, you're going to get a good push on Saturday night, and you're going to have some high profile matches, or if not, what was your understanding coming in?
The understanding when I came in, believe it or not, was they didn't know what to do with me. The next guy age-wise to me was Brian Pillman, and he was 28 and I was 21. So there was 7 years between the next oldest guy than me. So I was a kid, in here, and they didn't know what to do with me. So they hired me, I think, because of the way I looked. I think they thought I was a nice kid. I think they thought I was a good-looking kid with a good body. But really, I wasn't hired because I knew how to wrestle. Dusty had never seen me wrestle yet. He didn't really know that much about me. I think they hired me because of the way I looked, and they put me in the wrestling school. There wasn't no name of the wrestling school yet. It wasn't the what was it called? The
Power plant.
Thank you. There was no power plant. There was Jody Hamilton and Buddy Lee Parker in Griffin, Georgia, in a real crappy ass warehouse. That was the school of WCW. And there was only one person there, and it was Kevin Nash. And so because I went down there and saw him at that school, and because I was going to go to WCW school, the warehouse, I was going to go to that one for $3,000. I didn't have $3,000, so I paid $1,500 for Steve Lawler to train me, and Missy organized all that for me. And then because her and Bonnie Blackstone were like best friends, and Bonnie and Joe were married, so I do this, but no, I wasn't figured in at all. They didn't tell me anything. I went to school for $500 a week, and I signed a contract for that. Excited to do so, and show if I could do it and work my way up and all that stuff. And 2 days into school, Barry Windham blew his knee out, and Magnum TA called me up, and he goes, "Hey, you need to go on the road. Barry's gotten hurt." I said, "No problem. That sounds great." I go home. Keep in mind though, at $500 a week, going on the road is horrible, but who cares? Right now, I'm going on the road. So I come home and everything. Well, my phone rings the next day, and Magnum TA goes, "Where were you last night?" And I go, What do you mean, man? What do you mean?" He goes, "You wasn't there." And I go, "Where was it at?" And I can't remember the city, but it was somewhere in Tennessee. And I go, "Magnum, I had no idea." He goes, "It's right there on your booking sheet." And I go, "What's a booking sheet?" And when I said, "What's a booking sheet?" he went, "Never mind. I'll get you a booking sheet." And he knew by me saying, "What's a booking sheet?" that I obviously didn't know. So my very first night was in a town in Tennessee, and it was against Buddy Lee Parker. It would have been my first WCW house show match. And the next night was Panama City. And I remember me and my wife went to Panama City and made a road trip out of it. but we were broke because $500 a week and hotels and food and gas, they don't go very far. So when I got off that next road trip, they gave me I think my first contract was 150 grand, and I was off and running. Yeah.
In terms of your early television work, again, thinking of WCW Saturday Night, you're a staple of that program. Were you really nervous to do those initial TVs, and did you notice, or do you think the office noticed how you were getting such a young lion babyface reaction from some of those fans that weren't exactly regarded as being smart, because to my understanding they were brought in, and it was a real organic sort of reaction to your presence. You were getting a reaction, a strong one.
Yes, I was, and I remember thinking, like, I really can't explain to you, man, how much that global dressing room, talking to a guy for a few minutes, how that changed my whole career. I mean, I just couldn't believe the difference it made and what I could do and how I could do it and the confidence in me. Me looking back on it, I really don't remember being nervous ever. I had a fantastic memory, and it takes a great memory to be good in this industry because of remembering the finishes and what you got to do, and going. It's kind of like remembering your lines and not sounding like you're saying the lines off the paper. You got to remember it all, but then go out and perform it and make it look smooth. And it's just it's like a profession. Our profession is able to react, live, and to pull it off live and make it look good. The way I always explain it is Dancing with the Stars has 3 live dress rehearsals before they perform live on TV. 3 dress rehearsals before they perform live. We talk about our match and go perform it live. There's no going over the match. There's no walking through a backdrop clothesline sunset flip. You can't do that. So you talk about it and go out and perform it with no glitches. It's the biggest, hardest goal to try to reach. And that's why when somebody pulls off that one match that doesn't have any little stickler in it, it's a big reward, man. And that's what you get paid for in this industry, is going out and pulling it off with a tackle drop down leapfrog drop kick, and nothing's wrong with it, man. It's able to pull that off on live TV and make it look good, and you look good while you're doing it. And I did do that, and I looked good while I was doing it. But what really happened is when they put Sting into coming out and saving me, that's when it got really good.
A fan on social media wanted me to ask you about your first title shot in WCW was for the TV belt, and you faced Stunning Steve Austin, and it went to a time limit draw. Great match. I think it's available on YouTube if you haven't checked it out, fans. But he wanted me to ask you about that experience, that pressure, and then did you have any idea, given the way that Steve was being used or misused, whatever, in WCW at the time, that he would go on to be one of the Mount Rushmore men in this industry?
Yeah, man, that was a big, big deal. Stunning Steve Austin for us was known. He was one of, if not the best wrestler we had. He wasn't really, I don't think he even had found himself yet with all the Stone Cold Mike stuff. And, he was in the Dangerous Alliance, and he had the stringy hair. So everybody was trying to find their character. And I think he hadn't found Stone Cold yet by no means. But still, to be in the ring with a TV champion, and he's the best wrestler in the company, or one of the, and to go to a time limit draw, that's like winning the world title, at that junction. I mean, I'm a rookie, and I just took Stunning Steve Austin to a time limit draw. There couldn't have been a bigger push for me on that. And, that coming, and coming off the heels of that was, when Sting would come down and save me. from getting beat up, and then that tied me. I'm rubbing elbows now with Sting and all the top guys. So it just was a great angle. But I remember going to Dusty early on and going, Dusty, man, I'm getting beat every week. You know what? Why, man? What am I going to do? He goes, Bagwell. He goes, believe me. He goes, when you start winning, they won't remember none of it. And I can tell you, as crazy as it sounds, I can tell you a couple of times, and I remember one of them vividly. I grabbed my bags at center stage and went to leave. And I was making $150,000 a year as a 21-year-old kid. So I don't know what I was thinking, but I'm just telling you, when you get in this industry and you see and you start losing and you're hearing about it at home and hearing your fans, and it's something about it, man. It does bother you. It weighs on you, man. Even though that check is big, it just weighs on you. There was twice that I got up the hallway and I turned around and came back with my bags, put my bags in. One of them was I was getting beat by guys that would go to the WWF, and when they get brought back here, they would beat me again. And then they did that. Dan Spivey did it once where he left. He beat me. He left to go to the WWF. I got better and better. He came back, and I was his first victory. And I'm like, well, you got to be kidding. And then the guy that was the mask guy, the invader, big super invader or something.
Hercules Hernandez.
He beat me, left, and when he came back, he beat me with my own finish. I picked up my bags and left and got to my car and came back inside both times. I was like, but that's just negative, you know. But when I did that, I was really upset, you know. So I went to Dusty and I said, Dusty, man. And he goes, don't worry about it. They'll forget it. And they did. Fans forgot it, and they do forget it. But at the junction of 21 years old and the biggest egos are in this industry, it's pretty hard. It's pretty, you know, it's very hurtful to be losing these matches and hearing your fans talk about, you know, are you one of those losers on TV? And so I stuck it out, and it all did pay off, but Dusty did me right.
In moving on a bit in your WCW tenure, you seem to segue into some tag teams, and I know you talked about Scorpio and you won your first tag team championship there against the Nasty Boys. You had a brief combination with Tom Zink, and then of course Stars and Stripes, great team with Del Wilkes, and we'll talk about the American Males in a bit, but when you seem to be shifted in that direction, was that a source of discontent for you as well? Because did you see yourself as a singles and then look at tags as a step down?
No, I was very excited about tag team. Early on, I looked at the line of the world belt, and here's the world championship belt line that's real long. And here's this tag team world belt that's real short. So to me, I was very excited about that. I also thought it was great to be able to come in and go 1,000 miles an hour and tag out and get your breath, and your buddy come in 1,000,000 miles an hour, and then you come back in again, you're 100 miles an hour again. I really enjoyed that. Instead of learning the craft of, you know, get a hold and work the hold and all that, I just thought it was much better giving everybody 100% movement, 100% action, the whole match. Forget a hold spot, forget a rest spot. Let's run this damn thing, you know? And we did, and I got really good at it. I got really good at finishes. I got really good at setting matches up, but I got really good from hot tag on because of guys like Steve Austin and Brian Pillman and Tom Zinks and Scorpios and all these guys that were superstars that helped me, Patriots. I really feel like I got good at it. I mean, I was wrestling Paul Orndorff's and Paul Roma's and Nasty Boys's and all these big stars, man. So I learned, And I was able to call a damn good match early on to where I kept my mouth shut for a long time and I listened. And then when they would ask me and I would say something, we would use it and it worked. So they called on me a lot and I was very good at it and I loved it. I understood it. I understood the hot tag. I understood don't cover a guy during the comeback that brings the crowd down. I understood how to keep that crowd going for that hot tag and to keep them going during the comeback for the boom, boom, and the finish and boom. And I just understood how it worked and I loved it.
Yeah, it's really funny that you mentioned Pretty Wonderful. I want to ask you this question about Stars and Stripes working Pretty Wonderful, Paul Orndorff and Pretty Paul Roma, because Pretty Paul Roma is going to be at our Great North Wrestling event June 29th here in Napanee, Ontario, Canada. He's going to be accompanying his friend Mario Mancini. Will be wrestling his final match. So the fans are really excited to see Paul. Hasn't been in Canada in a while, but I wanted to get your memories of those matches because I remember them vividly and being extremely entertaining in that art of tag team wrestling that you just spoke about.
Yeah, man, those were great matches we had with those guys. Me and Scorp had some matches with those guys too, but it was me and Scorp was mainly the Hollywood Blonde with Austin and Pillman, but me and the Patriot did a lot more with Pretty Wonderful. And we had these matches in Germany on the German trip when Hogan first came into our company, and they were priceless, man. They were very good, companies, and I mean very good matches, and it was just crazy how me and Roma, our chemistry was just uncanny. Paul Roma is a super athlete, but in this business, a super athlete don't necessarily make a good wrestler. I've seen guys that couldn't throw a baseball or a football be fantastic at this. And I've seen guys that could throw a football and kick up and throw a baseball that couldn't run the ropes. So it's a very different business. This is called pro wrestling. But I do know that chemistry is definitely a thing. And me and Paul Roma had fantastic chemistry, and so did Dale Wilkes and Paul Orndorff. So if you watch those matches, a lot of the times it was always we had our spots with each other. I had my spot with Roma, and he'd do his spot with Orndorff, and then usually he was on me for the hot tag to the big man. But we just had a lot of great chemistry, and we had great matches laid out, and they allowed me to talk a lot in them, so it allowed me to get better and better.
Yeah, speaking of chemistry, you are very well known, of course, for the American Males, and Scotty Riggs was in fact on your Dark Side of the Ring episode. It's good to see that he appears to be doing better. Wondering the theme song of the American Males and the clap. You must get this question a lot, but I am always amazed when you talk about classic wrestling themes. That one comes up all the time. How important was that song to getting your team over, notwithstanding your presentations, the look, and your action in the ring?
Yeah, it was huge. It was a big part, and I do remember at first being a little bit embarrassed about the song. It was a little bit corny, and it's a little bit hokey pokey, but man, everybody knows that American Male song. It's a classic, and Jimmy Hart is who wrote that song for WCW, and he came to us. But Jimmy Hart was the biggest American Male fan there was. He was all about the guys. He liked the younger guys. He pushed for the younger guys when the company usually wasn't pushing for us, but he did. He really saw a lot in me and Scotty. He wrote that song, and he's the one that saw me and Scotty had shot a video for MTV for a group called AHA, and it was shot right by center stage. And Scotty wasn't even in the WCW yet. We shot this video for MTV, and a guy that shot it worked for WCW, and he was editing it at work, and Jimmy Hart saw us in the video, and he was like, "Who's this kid?" and it was Scotty Riggs. I mean, it was Scott Antal, and they brought him in, and I was a big fan of Lethal Weapon, and so I'm the one that came up with Scotty's name, calling him Scotty Riggs, and he loved it, and so we went with it. But it came from Riggs and Bertall and Lethal Weapon.
That's awesome. When the time frame came for you to turn heel and turn on Riggs, and you were offered this opportunity to become a part of the NWO, notwithstanding I've heard you comment about what a huge opportunity that was for your career, like a next level up deal. But were you ever concerned, given how popular you were with the fans, the ladies, et cetera, that if you went heel, that would somehow harm you in the long run, or did that enter your thought process at all?
It didn't even enter my thought process because it was going to be a great thing, regardless going to the NWO. I mean, it looked like it was going to be, of course. So, and it did turn out that way. But, but no, it was nothing but pluses all the way through. The only time I thought it was a little iffy on what we did with my career was when I came back from the broken neck. I could have came back from that and probably been one of, if not the biggest baby face on the planet. And they chose to make me a bad guy. Eric did. And I really don't have either way say on it. But I mean, I really didn't professionally anyway. But I didn't say like I'd rather not do that. My parents were devastated over it. I had 10,000 letters, man. I mean, I had broken my neck on live television and was paralyzed for several minutes. That's a big deal. And people let me know about it. And I had to have security guards round the clock at my hospital because people were trying to sneak in to see me and meet me. And it was crazy. I had passwords to get in. And so it was a big deal. I remember the night I turned heel when Scotty came out to hit Rick, and I said, no, and hit Rick with a chair and then took the NWO shirt off and all that. I remember the sound of the crowd. I felt like it was bad. Like it wasn't that heat, it was bad heat. I felt. I remember going, man, I mean, it was that sound of like, you gotta be kidding me, man. It wasn't that. It really did trick them. And it was bad sounding to me, but it worked really good. I think it was a great move. Buff makes a much better heel than he does a babyface. And you got to, no matter which one you go to, you got to become an incredible babyface to make an incredible heel and vice versa.
When you think about what a mainstream phenomenon the NWO was across the country, not just in traditional WCW territory, folks were on the street wearing the black and white. Later, the Wolf Pack. It seemed to be ubiquitous and everywhere. Some folks now are comparing the NWO to the Bloodline, and that storyline, and asserting that perhaps the Bloodline faction has finally, after all these years, become the number one faction in the history of the business. Do you think that has, of course, you're probably biased, but do you think that is at least at this point in time something that is not really accurate?
I think that's a fantastic topic. I've never really thought about it until you just said it, but man, thousands of things came to me instantly. And one of them is there's no way the Bloodline is any faction of what the NWO was, man. It just isn't. I mean, I do think it has been the closest thing to the NWO without a shadow of a doubt. But to say that those two are equal is a flat out misunderstanding lie, because it just isn't. It's not even close. I mean, I couldn't go anywhere with that NWO shirt on that it wasn't just people just flipped out. I mean, it was crazy. I remember being in the NWO, and I remember thinking that this was going to be one of the biggest things ever in pro wrestling. And I think up to date, I think it is the best thing that's ever happened so far. I think Bloodline is the second. I really do. That NWO thing, forget Buff Bagwell, forget him. The NWO thing was special, man. It was special. I mean, to see those guys and Scott Hall and X-Pac and Hogan and all that, it was special, bro. So it just means a lot, to be part of that. And please hear me. I want a bad say, man, that place, that Bloodline, that was better than the NWO. As long as, NWO being one of the top things ever, that's great. I want it to be, I want somebody to blow the NWO out of the water, but it just hasn't happened. And if it does, fantastic. I will root it on, but it just hasn't. The Bloodline is really cool. The one problem I have with the Bloodline is that Roman just didn't wrestle enough. I mean, our star, our champion, Hogan, or whoever it was, Luger, or whoever the champ was, he wrestled all the time and was always on television. Hell, you never used to see Roman on TV. I mean, every once in a while, an interview or something, but he just wasn't on as much as I thought he should have been. And so I just didn't dig it. It just wasn't cool to me. You could see us every Monday, every Thursday, from Kevin Nash down to Buff Bagwell and NWO. You saw us all, and we were doing something fun and going off TV red hot. And I've seen the last couple of weeks, even leading up to Mania, they went off TV really cold a couple of times. And I'm like, really? I mean, come on. I mean, when we went off the TV, it was, you couldn't wait to turn it on next Monday. You couldn't wait. And it just ain't like that anymore. And The Rock brought so much back with this. And I heard The Rock left Dallas Page a message a couple of weeks ago. And he goes, wrestling hasn't been like this in over 2 decades. And that's the truth. It hasn't been like that since the NWO run and since The Rock and all that run. It just hasn't been. The Rock brought back some of that magic. He really did.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you 100%. At least now, anyway, you just have to look at the continuance of merch sales for those T-shirts and all the diehard NWO fans out there. That it's something that almost a once in a lifetime sort of phenomenon. And I agree with you as well. Good for WWE and the Bloodline being close, but it's their second. In terms of another fan question on social media, they wanted to ask about your team, another great team with Scott Norton, and he asked about the chemistry that you had in that tandem. Really, really evident. Do you have any good stories about working with Scott?
Oh man, that's number one. Scott, through all of my tag teams, I loved them all. Was great friends with every one of them. I don't really have a favorite. I really don't. But I do believe, and even me and Scott Norton is not a favorite of mine because we wasn't together long enough. But there is no doubt in my mind that if me and Scott Norton would have continued, that would have been the best tag team in the history of pro wrestling. And 80% of that quote would have been because of the name. Vicious and Delicious is spectacular. It was a kid named us that. We were at a TJ Applebee's type, like a bar type grill restaurant out of state somewhere, like not in Georgia, but like I think it was like Michigan. And I remember this kid was behind us, and me and Scott turned to him, and the kid with these eyes looks at us and he goes, "Vicious and Delicious." And Scott started laughing, and I go, "What'd you say?" And I wrote it down, and I said, "What? Wait a minute. What made you think of that?" And he didn't tell me. He just went, vicious and delicious again. And me and Scott Norton went straight home and airbrushed everything on my pants, delicious, vicious on his. And brother, we were off and running, and it was going to be, because of the NWO and because of the name Vicious and Delicious, that was going to be the best tag team ever. You got the big, vicious, barrel-chested Japanese killer, and you got the pretty boy Punk that's beautiful. It was incredible. It was going to be the best thing ever. And I don't know if you remember what happened, but it was my broke neck that stopped it.
Yeah.
Because when I came back to TV, Norton was in Japan and Scott Steiner was there. So they put me with Steiner, and that was another great connection.
Absolutely. I always like to get the reminiscences of WCW guys during your era in terms of working that Sturgis pay-per-view. And for a guy that was, a heel during the time frame, did you find, given the way that the crowd was there, that it was really hard to do what you need to do to get the hot tag to when the baby face is making the comeback? Because it looked like a lot of the time the heels were cheered. So that question and just that general experience that you had there.
Well, yeah, it was that crowd being bikers. I think we wrestled Harlem Heat there.
Yes.
And so, being black guys, I think they automatically were probably the heels because they were black. And then you had all the Harley dudes are white dudes, So I think that caused a little bit of heat. And plus that, the NWO was over, So tough crowd. But yeah, we were more the baby faces there, of course. But we always had great matches. Of all things, for me and Booker's match to go down as a bad match, even though I think that's ridiculous. It wasn't a great match, but it wasn't a bad match. But for it to go down in history, I would like people to investigate if they get bored enough. Look at every time that me and Booker wrestled, and it was a lot. How great we were together. Me and Booker's chemistry was the best that I have ever had in my career. And for that to go down as the bad match that got me fired or whatever the crazy ass rumor is nuts to me, because it just isn't true. It was a bad match, but there was nothing wrong with the match. There wasn't nothing mechanically wrong with it. So I don't quite understand that. But the long and the short of it is, me and Booker's chemistry was uncanny. If somebody could get a hold of the video of the night before my last match in Seattle, Washington, me and Booker tore the house down. So it's just a really unfortunate situation that happened that night. And, I've heard Booker talk about it a little bit too, and didn't know part of this. I just did Conrad Thompson's podcast a few days ago, and he talks about where Booker, me and Booker probably have never even talked about that match ever. I remember coming back that night, 24 years ago, and me and Booker were kind of arguing about what happened. And then I remember Johnny A stopping us and going, "Stop." He goes, "For starters, it's our fault. Y'all don't argue about this." And we're like, "What?" And he goes, "Pat Patterson thought that I was coming to you guys to go over your match. And I thought that Pat Patterson was doing it. So neither one of us did. And it's our fault, man." And I'm sure you've never heard that story.
No.
But again, that's the truth. The truth is, and did that matter? I think a pretty good percentage it does matter, because we didn't know what they wanted. All we were told to do was what Stone Cold told us, which was what he was going to do. He was going to come out during Booker's comeback, cut Booker off, Angle and me join in, and they're going to throw us out of the back of the building. That's all we knew. So we went out and gave them a WCW style match with a female announcer that was not over, that had never announced in her life, a Arn Anderson and Scott Hudson, which is a D team announce crew, at the WWF show Monday Night Raw. That's a pretty tough crowd. And we're doing it 5 1,000 miles away from the backyard of Ted Turner, and we're going to be there in 7 days. Why are we trying to put this square peg in a round hole? I don't know. But the thing I've always talked about when I share this is Shane McMahon appeared in the dressing room, at the go position before I went out, and he goes, "Don't look in the camera." And I said, "What?" He goes, "Don't look in the camera." I said, "Man," I said, "Please." I go, "That's all I do." I said, "Brother," I said, "Shane, that's all I do. I look in the camera. I give a really good match. I pose. That's all I do, Shane." And he goes, "If you look in the camera, you're fired." And I didn't know this. I've told that story several times, but Booker was told the same thing, and I did not know that. But it wasn't Booker's gimmick. It was my gimmick to talk in the camera during the heat, during the match. Watch that match back. I never look in the camera because I was told by my boss not to. But I think now that I know Booker was told the same thing, that he was told not to shake hands and stuff. Now, why would they tell us that? I've never said this, but out of Booker T's mouth, he said that it was like they set us up for failure. And me and Booker both thought that with our hands over our face, we're talking backstage going, "Why are we doing this 7 days before Atlanta? Why are we doing that?" Keep in mind, there's no way we're going to take that to the bosses. We're main event on Monday Night Raw. You shut your mouth and you go do it. But we went out there and did it with all things stacked against us. And to come out of it with not one flaw, not one bad punch, not one bad kick, all the moves performed correctly, and to get told I got fired over that, that's just kind of ridiculous. But there was more to don't look in the camera and don't shake hands. And Stacy Keibler being an announcer, and Double A and Scott Hudson, which is, I've never even seen that combination before, be ring announcers. There's just more to that story.
First of all, I think you're absolutely accurate in the history regarding this match in a twisted way. It made zero sense, and nobody talked about it until recently, that match was not taking place anywhere near WCW country. But these instructions that you got, where did you ever find out where that came from? Was it the agent or was it a Vince call?
Never really knew it was, and I never knew that Booker until 2 days ago, that Booker had told people that they told him not to shake hands. Here's Booker T, the WCW heavyweight champion, that's coming out with and not shaking hands. So I didn't know that because Booker went out first. And then everybody that sees my entrance with all the pyro and everything, they're thinking, "Oh my God, they got huge plans for this kid." And the plans were I was fired the next week. So very weird, we just knew that there's nobody that can explain why you would force 7 days early a square peg in a round hole. It just isn't necessary. They even called it the invasion. Well, we'll be invading Ted Turner in his backyard in just 7 days. Not 2 weeks, not 3 weeks, 7 days. So why not just wait for the invasion and invade with Michael Buffer and the real good team of announcers? I love Scott Hudson and I love Double A, but it just didn't look like it was meaningful. Who's Stacy Keibler? She's not an announcer. She's a super attractive woman. She did very great in the business. She's in the Hall of Fame, but at that stage, she was nothing. She was nobody to be an announcer for a match. So very weird setup. And again, it does look like, looking outside, looking in, it was set up for failure.
Is that your opinion as well, more globally on the invasion angle? Being a fan, we were excited, thought this is finally going to be it. All these years of build, the Monday Night War, et cetera, and then it seemed to be, it seemed to get over like a fart. in church, and it had to be, they had to work on screwing that up because that was money, money, money. Is that your take on it as well?
Yes, it's just heart. It really hurts my heart to know where that could have gone, man. I mean, Sting versus Rock, Rock. I mean, just every combination you want to think of that nobody was ever going to see. Sting versus Undertaker. I mean, all the matches that were going to be done. Luger versus, I mean, all the mixes and matches you can do was finally going to happen. It was finally going to be the WCW versus the WWF. There's no way to mess this up. It's going to work. And we started off with doing it 5,000 miles away. I don't understand.
Yeah, no doubt, a real head scratcher to say the least. A fan on social media wanted me to ask about when you were brought into the NWO and your relationship with Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Hogan. What your experience was working with them, and then your thoughts on how the angle expanded so much to have a black and white, and no disrespect to them, a B team, and then before that the Wolf Pack, etc.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, you're talking about when I first turned on Scotty and joined the NWO was, I mean, getting in the ring with those stars, Nash and Hall and, the Giant and X-Pac. And it was just no doubt about it. It was another level. And then, to see them get it too watered down, it was a little depressing. But then, I really think it started getting a little bit depressing when it was the B team NWO guys. That's when, to me, it got to be too much. It was like, dadgummit, they had a good thing going here. So they tried to pull it out by doing the red and black, which I thought was another great idea. But again, I think it was a little too late. But the black and white was, it was something special that I feel like we probably should have just kept the black and white and just whittled it back down to an elite group and left it like that. But, a Tuesday morning quarterback is easy to do.
You said so yourself after that situation with WWF, WWE when you left. You had so much left in the tank. You're what, 30, early 30s, and you went to work for TNA for a bit, and then I wanted to ask you about that experience and why it was rather brief. And then, was there ever any attempt? Sometimes we see stars go away and then come back, that sort of thing. Were you ever in serious talks to return to the Federation? But first, the TNA bit, please.
Yeah, the TNA thing, I was real excited about it because, it was the next big company. And so, like what usually happens to me is they came to me to do all of the publicity. I really hustled, man. I was making live shots the day of our first show, and it was in Huntsville, Alabama. It was Huntsville, Alabama. And I remember that was our very first taping. And I was making appearances where they were far apart, and I was making them live. Like, I barely get there for the live show. And hey, how you doing? And and then in the car, it was me and my wife in the car, zipping to the other one a couple hours away and walking in right in time for the thing. And hey, how you doing? And then to work that hard for the company. And I get to the show, and the show starts off with a 20-man battle royal, and I'm the first one thrown out. And I said, Jeff, who cares about what I just did? Why? Why? Why would you have me do all that and then beat me first on the very first thing I've ever done? I was the first person to lose on any section of anything in the TNA world. And I went, why? I said, I don't care, but I got to know, why would you have me run everywhere to advertise you guys when you're just going to beat me first match? I mean, first got over the ropes. So it was the same kind of thing as everything else. I felt like I was getting mistreated again. It was weird. So it was what it was, and I held on best I could. And my addiction got bigger and bigger, and I'm sure it affected my career and my personal relations too. But again, no warnings, no showing up passed out, no coming to work drunk. There was no, I didn't get in trouble. I was just a little bit sedated a lot. Um, and everybody knew, I think, but again, it didn't affect my work. Several guys took somas and drank beer. I did a little more than most, but it wasn't a problem. I wasn't letting it affect my career. And so again, it wasn't no Bagwell stop it. Like the WWF didn't give me a Bagwell. Can we do something about this? It was just Bagwell, you're gone. And I was like, wow. So back to finish off with the WWF, it was no warning. And then when I left, they told me to call him back in 3 months. I never was told you're fired. Never. I was told I was getting released. I raised my hand and I asked what the difference of fired and released was. They told me that they'd have to redo my contract at fired. And if they released me, I could come back in 3 months. Now, I knew that meant fired, but they didn't say you're fired. They also didn't say we're releasing you because of a bad match. They also didn't say they're releasing me because my mother called. But that's what they told everybody, and that was in the world kind of. But what upset me more than anything is that the world believed it. Your mother calling for you, whether she did or didn't, is irrelevant. It doesn't. I mean, again, tell your mother not to call. I would have said, Mother, don't call again if she did. But I can't do something I don't have my hands on or I don't know is a problem. But the
Why do you
world
think?
believed it, so it was kind of tough to fix something the world that actually believed that I got fired over a bad match. So I called about once every 2 months. I would call and talk to Johnny Ace or Jim Ross, and each time they said, we got nothing for you.
Sorry,
I was
didn't mean.
never given a second chance.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but that story is very famous, and I know you've disputed it, but why? What do you think the motivation was there for Mr. Ross to uh, say that about your mom and saying, you can call on my birthday, whatever, but don't call me about your son again? It seemed to be rather damaging at the time.
It wasn't rather damaging. It was devastating. It ended my career. I'm sure people saw me go online and rip JR apart because I was hurt. I mean, he hurt me beyond repair. It is a flat out lie that my mother called Jim Ross. I had an agent named Brad Small. Brad Small, why would I have my mother call when I got an agent that I'm paying 15% of my money? Your mother calling for something is A, embarrassing. B, it ain't gonna get nowhere. So even if she did do it and they warned me and I called mother and said, hey, mother, don't do that. But that was never told to me. I didn't know my mother called. That was just something that Jim Ross said. So it was really, I hate to say it, it's a Jim Ross lie. It's a lie. But I can't prove that. There was 3 people at my house today after Booker T's match in Tacoma. Jim Ross called me up, and there was 3 people that heard what he said. God, me, and Jim. 3. Out of those 3, God's not going to say nothing, and they're going to believe Jim over me. But what was said was, hey, Buff, we want you to take off this weekend, rest your head, and we got big plans for you on Monday. I swear to God to you, the day I got that call from Jim Ross was the biggest relief I ever had. I got into the gym all week. I got tan. I made sure my head was right. I got all ready to go. to show up to Monday Night Raw in Atlanta and get released. So now what transpired from him saying that was a rumor that my mother called to get me out of those house shows, and the bad match is what got me fired. So that's not true. It's not possible. If getting fired is a thing by having a bad match, we need to fire somebody every Monday night.
Yeah, for the record, I don't think it was a bad match either. WCW style, but certainly not bad. Last fan question we got from social media. Given your long-standing history with members of the Rhodes family, Dusty, Dustin, wanted to get your thoughts. The fan did about them finally putting that world heavyweight title on Cody. And what do you think his odds are for a long, barring injury, a long and successful run?
I think it's fantastic. I'm real excited that they, that they put it in the works for that to happen. The story that needed to be told and the way they drew it out, the way they did, I thought it was just a fantastic way to do it. I think Cody's going to be a great champion. I'm not a big Roman Reigns fan. I'm not, but I like Roman Reigns and I respect him and all that, but I'm just not a huge fan of his. I never have been, but I'm a huge Cody fan. I think it's time. It was definitely time for a new champion, and I think Cody's going to be spectacular. And it makes me feel good because his father believed in me one time too, and as much as his father believes in everything, I mean, as much as he believes in Dusty and as much as Dusty's involved in his life or was involved in his life, it makes me feel like I'm part of the team a little bit. And it makes me feel good to know that Cody's out there. I mean, Cody don't know, he knows me, but he don't, he actually calls me up, what's going on, buddy? So I respect Cody. I think Cody respects me, and I just hope the best for him. I think it's going to be a really great thing. The night that I saw him slap The Rock, it elevated him to the degree he needs to be, because when The Rock's out there with them boys, they just don't look like they fit. They're not quite the spectacle that The Rock is, and it hurts them a little bit, but The Rock is 1 in a million, man. So they did a great job, him and Seth both, and they look spectacular. They just don't look quite like The Rock, but it's like a man playing with boys out there, but they still did a great job, and I love them letting Cody slap The Rock, and it elevated him for sure. I've always been a big Seth fan, so I thought it was done great, and just looking forward to seeing a lot of good stuff from Cody.
Last live fan question, and this is one I had on my mind as well. Would you accept a WWE Hall of Fame offer and/or a Legends deal?
I would accept a WWE offer of any kind. I've always wanted to be underneath their umbrella. When I got hired, when I first heard that my name was mentioned by Vince McMahon, I was excited and wanted to be part of this thing forever. I mean, this was a true dream that was ripped from me, man. And it wasn't a good rip. It was a bad rip. I mean, there's several things here that I think I've proven to show that there's several doubts on how this thing went down. And it just, all the bets are in, and the bets are that I got a little bit screwed on this thing, and that's okay. I don't care. It's over. I'm sober. I want to be and would love to be under the WWE with a Legends deal, and to be able to wear a WWE shirt and say, I am in the WWE. I would love that.
In speaking about WCW, you've got a lot of fans that fondly remember WCW, and not only the Monday Night Wars, but I think the early to mid '90s was a great period that has been overly slandered over the years. How do you respond when you get such love from the diehard WCW fans to this day? And we're talking, as you pointed out, so many years later.
So say that again to me now. I didn't quite understand.
The fact that there's so many fans still of a certain vintage, myself included, that have such love and affection for WCW, not just the Monday Night War period, but the early to mid '90s, and all the fans that so much appreciate your work from that period so many years later.
I really, when I think about it, I get upset because they were also, it was also ripped away from them. It was ripped away that WCW overnight, man, overnight was gone. It was gone. And not just did an income and a life get hurt, it was gone from the fans too. So I hate it, man. I hate that this invasion, the invasion was going to be the best thing that wrestling ever saw, man. They were finally going to get what they never thought they were going to see, man. They were going to get it all. And they got nothing, except WCW was gone. So I hate it for all the fans. And believe it or not, though, I don't hear it a lot. Like I'll be at an event somewhere, and about one out of every 20 fans, not less than that, one out of 100 will have this deep of an interaction with what went down. And I would think they would be every couple of fans that had this kind of a talk. But it's about every 100 that has this depth of, man, I can't believe how bad we got screwed. And WCW was going to be fantastic and it was gone. And really that understands it fully. But man, it was a really horrible thing that happened. And I just happened to be the very front end of it that went down,
Mm. Well, Buff, I've really appreciated this interview tonight. It's absolutely informative and definitely one I've been looking forward to for a very long time, being a fan of yourself in WCW. But I wanted to ask you, do you have any remaining goals in ring in the wrestling business? What's next for Buff Bagwell?
What's next for Buff Bagwell is I've got one last knee surgery. I've had my knee replaced and I had my left foot surgery on, both those stemming from my car wreck 4 years ago. But there's one last knee surgery that's got to be done. And it's for a part of my knee that's called my knee mechanism. And it's what allows your knee to flex your quad, to extend your knee. I am missing that piece. And so if they go back in and fix that in 3 months, within 9 months, I will be able to say I'm getting back in the ring, or I will be able to say I'm never wrestling again in about 8 or 9 months.
That notwithstanding, where can the fans find you on social media? And do you have any other appearances coming up that the fans should be aware of? And where can they find you to keep on top of everything that you have going on?
The best thing they can do is go to marcusbuffbagwell.com. That's my website. And you can find all my social media stuff there, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that. marcusbuffbagwell.com. My email address is marcusbuffbagwell@gmail.com. marcusbuffbagwell@gmail. I am in several cities across the world coming up. There's no certain next event. Every weekend I'm somewhere. By going to one of those pages on one of my social medias, by going to marcusbuffbagwell.com, you'll be able to see my calendar and see where I'm at every weekend. So check it out. And if you ever want to get in touch with me for action figure or anything, an 8x10, or just to say hello to me, my email address is marcusbuffbagwell@gmail.com. And I'm just thankful for all the fans out there. And this, I got a little traction right now on social media because of the DDPY video with Scotty Riggs that came out, and with the Vice show that come out. So very glad it came out at a good time, and just trying to stay busy with everything.
Well, Buff, thank you very much for this interview. We'll stay in touch and hope to do this again. We'll keep on top of your rehab, and I know all the fans are really looking forward to perhaps you stepping in the ring for that one last or two great runs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Well, fans, that's it for this very special edition of the Great North Wrestling Podcast. If you haven't already, please Subscribe to thehannibaltv.com. Hit that like button to stay on top of all the great content that we have coming. I'm Jack Kilby. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching The Hannibal TV. Please help me out and like this video, then click the subscribe and get notifications buttons so you don't miss any of my latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Follow us on Facebook at The Hannibal TV.